When sugary cereals came under attack in the 1970s, and the vice president of Kellogg's Public Affairs made a statement, what he said was, well, he was asked how they can call sugary cereal, meaning made from grain, and his answer was, well, the candid answer is to meet a lifestyle. Maybe we should quit calling them breakfast cereal and start calling them breakfast foods. These are mini meal replacements. We don't care whether they're made with grain or not. I want us to pause and think about that. He didn't care if they were made with grain or not. Now, when the chairman of Gerber, after dropping 2 highly sweetened baby foods, was asked a similar question, his reply was, "We never said they were particularly nutritious. We just said they tasted good." So, as a parent, when I pick up a package labeled cereal in the grocery store, I expect it to be a grain-based food. And that's today, in 2023. Can you imagine back in 1970 that I would have imagined this even more so, not knowing the stupidity that happens, the trickery that happens from food companies towards us, like we know today? And this trickery didn't start with cereal. And I want us to really pause and think about where it started. Because it started years earlier with dessert. Pudding used to be a long to make process, right? So pudding used to take hours. And in the 1950s, General Mills hired a food scientist to work on shortening the labor-intensive process of making pudding. And there were strict instructions that it needed to be made with all natural ingredients because that was important to consumers. We wanted natural foods. So the scientists worked on that process for years without any success. So how did we end up with Jell-O pudding that we have on the shelves today? Well, that happened because a rival company applied for a patent for their instant pudding that was taking 15 minutes instead of taking hours. And believe it or not, that was all it took for General Mills to all of a sudden not care that we wanted all natural ingredients. And they quickly found a process that beat this company's 15-minute cook time. Now, I want to point out something. This company, yes, they were making pudding in 15 minutes. However, if you didn't eat the pudding within the next 15 minutes, so you had a 15-minute window to eat it, it became rubbery. The process of thickening didn't actually stop. Well, I swear. I want you to ask yourself if you think that sounds like something healthy to eat. If I leave it on the counter, within 15 minutes, it becomes rubbery. So I need to eat it before that happens, but then what does that mean for what it's doing inside of me? Well, the chemical that was causing the thickening was calcium acetate, which is used to treat people with end-stage kidney disease who are on dialysis. That's still used apparently till today because it removes potassium out of the foods we eat. So if it was still active enough that it was still making this reaction happen and we're eating it, what is it doing inside of us? Would that mean that maybe there's enough in there to impact our health or the health of the person who's eating it? Now, luckily, this product never made it to the public because Jell-O pudding was born using the 2 chemical reactions that they found, pyrophosphate and orthophosphate. And the world still enjoys this Jell-O dessert even today. Now, what was special about it, of course, is that they were able to do the process in 5 minutes. And that's despite the fact that the public was asking for all natural ingredients, we got a chemical process. So because the competitor came to the table faster than they were able to do it naturally, our desire for natural ingredients thrown out the window, right? It's more important to beat the competitor than it was to give us a healthy dessert. And it's dessert. Can I just point that out for 5 seconds? It's not a main meal. It's dessert. Who cares? But somehow, more important for us to have that dessert. So, as it seemed like from that moment onward, anything goes was the new standard for what could go into our food. The noble idea of saving women time in the kitchen opened the door to adding any chemical that was deemed non-toxic to our food. Now, we need to keep in mind that it takes years for small amounts of toxins to show negative impacts on our health. We've learned this, if you've watched my channel at all, when we talk about sugar. It's a small amount of toxin that we're eating every single day that adds up over the years and is causing havoc in our bodies. And it's something that's found in any plant. What is happening when we take these specialty chemicals that we're pulling together in a lab and start putting them in our food? Now, the second problem that I see is that just because something isn't toxic in small amounts doesn't mean that it won't harm you when it's put in a sugary food that encourages overeating. So now what we've created is a situation where someone might actually eat it in large amounts, because I know that I personally have overdrank soda. I know that I have personally overeaten chocolate. Do we know people who overeat on a regular basis? What's happening to all those chemicals in small amounts that if you only had it once a week wouldn't be a big deal, but you're having it every day, multiple times a day? Let's ask ourselves another question. What do you think would happen if you allowed your small child or children to choose what you would eat for a week? If they could really, really choose, like, sky's the limit. This is what the family's going to have for dinner for the next week. What do you think would be on your plate? Is it possible that you'd be eating cookies and ice cream and cake and whatever junk food that they love for breakfast, lunch, and supper? Well, I want you to understand something that was shocking to me when I was reading this book. That, believe it or not, that's exactly how the breakfast pastries and tang came to be known as breakfast foods. The food scientists were given the instructions: do not be afraid to invent new things for breakfast. And this was based on the fact that the head marketer's daughter loved having cake for breakfast. So he just threw it out to them. She would eat cake for breakfast. What else might she eat? Right? Don't be boxed in by what we typically have for breakfast. The only constraints that they were given was that the food needed to be easy to buy, easy to open, prepare, and eat. They weren't supposed to rely on what consumers wanted. That was an instruction, because apparently we don't actually know what we want. So, in 1956, they transformed orange juice into tang. And the decision was actually made to remove all the vitamins and minerals out of tang, with the exception of vitamin C, because it was ruining the taste. It was ruining the taste. The healthy parts, the only healthy parts, was ruining. So what do you get left with? You got left with vitamin C, orange flavor, and sugar. We don't know what we want. That's what they're telling us. Well, are they telling us, or are we telling them? We say that we want healthy food, but then we buy all the sugary food that companies make. Now, maybe it's because we don't fully understand how sugary these foods are. There was a dentist that did some research. He was disgusted by the number of people coming in with cavities all of a sudden in his career back in the 1970s. And so he decided to go to the grocery store and he collected all the breakfast cereals. And he started to do analysis on them to see how much sugar were in the breakfast cereals. And the breakfast cereals ranged from 40 some odd percent all the way up to 70 some odd percent. The cereals that were marketed to children were on the higher end of that sugar spectrum, but the lower end ones that are marketed to adults still in the 40s. What I want you to think about, Wellness Warrior, is that first of all, a lot of those cereals are still on the shelves today. And second of all, if we didn't have this dentist to double check how much sugar is actually in it, because the sugar content did not used to be on the packages back in the 1970s, we would not have known that the cereals that we were eating ourselves and feeding to our children were heavily processed through a sugar infusion process. So even though a lot of us were still saying we want healthy foods, the unfortunate reality is that when we say we want all natural products, but then gobble up the foods that have chemicals in them, gobble up the foods that are high in sugar, what we don't understand is that we are telling the food companies that this is really what we want, right? Because when we tell them that they can approximate things, that they take that as permission, that they can do whatever they want, whatever is necessary to attain the result. So one of the examples that was given in the book was that there was a focus group that was told that they were trying to make Rice Krispie squares into a cereal. And they asked the participants, after giving them the example of what was happening with the true Rice Krispie square, so if you make it the right way, with Rice Krispies and marshmallows and butter, what was happening to it when you put it in milk was it was turning to mush. And they asked them, well, would you prefer to eat this, or would you prefer to eat something that stayed crispy even though it wasn't gooey? And their response was, well, it only needs to taste gooey. That response, we need to understand, gave that food company, Kellogg, license to then make a cereal that actually did not use the normal ingredients that we'd use to make a Rice Krispie square, as long as it tasted like a Rice Krispie square. What does that mean? It means more chemicals. And we don't understand that when we say, well, it just needs to be close enough, that they take that to mean, oh, I could do whatever I want to get the result, and you're going to be okay with it. That's them taking our statement as permission to do what will approximate what we want, even if it's not healthy for us. And that's what they did. And it's on the shelves today. Rice Krispie Squares cereal. Now, I want us to understand that the fight for stomach share is how much, the space in our stomach can they have over the other companies, is real. And they're going to do anything to win. Our children getting sick from orange dye #1 in the candies that they were selling wasn't enough to slow them down on adding additives to our food. Apparently, we were reacting to isolated incidents. That's the answer that they give, right? You can't, turn the whole industry over based on isolated incidents. If it was my child, is that me overreacting? If it's your child, is that you overreacting? How would you react if you found out that food companies, they had an idea that this dye in this food in large amounts could cause illness, but it doesn't happen often enough so we can feed it to our children. Wellness Warrior, there is so much more information in this book than I can cover here. It's shocking, and I encourage you to read it. It's linked in the description below. But today's conversation is just about us trying to truly understand what it means that food companies are taking license in what they call food. Because apparently, cereal, food, breakfast, meal replacement, like these words for them, all it means is public is going to eat it, we're going to sell it. Is that what you want? Okay. So I want to take a moment to talk about the fact that as I'm reading this book, I'm like barely into the book. And every time I'm just floored, shocked about how money is the main goal for food companies. And if you're like me and you feel like our health should be first, the best way to make sure that your health is the priority is to vote with your dollars. The food you buy is going to determine the food they make, the food that's available. If you want healthy foods to be available, what you need to do is buy the healthier versions of the foods. So I honestly feel like the one thing that I'm learning from all of this, and I think I learned it first and foremost starting my keto lifestyle, but this book is reinforcing it, is that the cereals that I used to eat thinking that this was a healthy breakfast, you're talking about all bran, you're talking about shredded wheat and all the frosted shreddies and all these other cereals that are marketed as healthy. You don't need to add sugar to them. The sugar's already there. We don't realize that by allowing food companies to control the sugar that's going into our food, what we're actually doing is giving them permission to put even more sugar in our food. And they do that because it causes us to chase the food, right? The more sugar that's in there, the more we want to eat it, the more we're out of control while we eat it. It's a win for them. It's a loss for us. So honestly, I think that the best thing that any of us can do is start to make real food for breakfast, right? So if I was going to have breakfast, what I would have for breakfast is eggs and some kind of breakfast meat, bacon, or even, it doesn't even matter, have your breakfast meat. The other thing is, if I was going to have breakfast, maybe I'd have some chicken or and a salad. Like the truth of the matter is, breakfast is whatever breaks your fast, and we can choose to have healthy things for breakfast. Back in the 70s, it was common to have bacon, sausage, ham, and beefsteak for breakfast, right? That was a normal thing to do. Today we're eating these sugary cereals because it's easy. I want us to consider that convenience of the food isn't really convenient if it means that later on I'm sick, if it means that later on I have health issues, right? Because at that point, my entire world now becomes around trying to solve my health issues. For me, it was trying to be able to walk normally because my hip was killing me. And can I say that had I known that this was the reason that all these convenience foods were on the shelves, I wouldn't have bought them. So I hope that this video helps somebody to just take a package, turn it over, look at the label, make a better decision. I'm going to sign off for today. Really love making these videos for you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again in the next installment of this video, because there's going to be another one. I'm sure that as I go through the book, I'll find more things that I want to talk to you about. Have a great rest of your day, Wellness Warrior. I'll talk to you soon.